Welcome to Pride in Parsippany. I'm your host, Mayor James Barbario, and my guest today is our sewer superintendent and engineering consultant, Joe Beckmeyer, who runs the entire sewer utility. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for inviting me to this program, provide information about the sewer utility. Most people don't think of us except when there's a problem. I mean, when they take a shower, wash their clothes and so on, flush the toilet, they don't think about us. But except maybe when they get their sewer bill, then they remember us.
Remember us. But anyway, can you give us a little history of yourself?
Yeah, I'm graduated from, got my bachelor's degree in civil engineering and master's degree in environmental engineering from New Jersey Institute of Technology. Licensed professional engineer in New Jersey, licensed professional planner, certified public works manager, a S4 and C4 wastewater treatment operators, and a W2 and T2 water treatment operator, and 28 years in Jersey City with Jersey City Sewage Authority, MUA, and then 5.5 years with the City of Newark Water and Sewer Department.
I remember when I interviewed you, was it last year? I think it
Yes.
was. Last year, we had several interviews, and the minute we got done, I knew you were the guy for the job.
Why, thank you.
Your experience, not just the experience. We have a million gallon per day plant, and I know when I became the mayor, the plant was really dysfunctional, not in the sense, I mean operational more than anything, and it needed to be upgraded, and all the renovations are done, not all done yet, but I felt you were the guy that could lead us through that renovation process after it was completed. And I could tell you, and the reason why I'm talking about this is because when I became the mayor, prior to that, our energy costs was skyrocket, $143,000 a month, and just electric bill alone. And once the plant was done, it went down to like $33,000 a month. So there was a savings there. But can you describe to the residents, because I know it's a gold mine. I consider the sewer treatment plant a gold mine, but it's not something I really talk about that often because it's sewer. But can you tell the residents or our audience how the sewer treatment plant functions?
Well, as you mentioned, the treatment plant originally was constructed in the 1960s at 4 million gallons a day. Since recent upgrade was about $23 million capital improvement, but it wound up saving about $1.4 million a year in electric costs. So it's a big benefit. Part of the tankage could be abandoned because it wasn't needed as we went to a more advanced treatment. The treatment process consists of the screening of the raw sewage to collect any articles that might clog up equipment downstream. We have to lift it up because you start out 30 feet down in the ground, lift it up to the level of the tanks. We then go through grit collection to take out like sand, stone, glass, shells that might be, and it would further damage equipment. We run through primary sedimentation where the sewage sits for about 2 hours, and anything that will settle out under gravity, we collect. That goes as our primary sludge. We then send the wastewater into the aeration basins. They've been modified now where we used to provide air all the time, using the bugs to work, the bacteria to work against themselves. We step feed the wastewater at 4 different locations at different percentages, control percentages, and then we also control the amount of air we induce to the tank, bubble through the tank, from high air to no air to high air to no air. And this fools the bacteria, so at one point they eat the carbon material, then they eat the nitrogen and phosphorus and so on, and by doing this we were able to get a high level of treatment. We then settle out, we go to another set of sedimentation tanks where those bacteria settle out. They ate a lot, they settle to the bottom. We collect them, part of it we waste, we don't need it, and another part of it, they're hungry again, we send them back to the beginning and we start feeding the process over again. The water that comes out of the system after the sludge settles, the secondary sludge settles out, that water is then disinfected, dechlorinated, and sent out to the confluence of the Rockaway and Whipping River, which is part of the Passaic River Basin. We have a very high level of treatment as required from our treatment plant and others in the area because there are at least two drinking water intakes downstream in the Passaic River Basin.
Right.
So that has to be retreated again and distributed for people for drinking water. So we have to make sure we have a high level of treatment at our plant.
Can you describe what the advanced wastewater treatment plant?
Well, the advanced water treatment plant was just as I described. We have 16 million gallons a day is the design capacity. We're running about 8 to 9 million gallons a day, and that includes almost all of the sewage from Parsippany, plus we get sewage from East Hanover, Montville, Mountain Lakes, and Denville. Right. But again, one of the things is that we're required to produce this high level of treatment, and one of the things that help us is our operators. They're town employees, but they're really environmentalists, protectors of the environment. I try to think of them, I sometimes think of them sort of like if they were a winemaker or a brewer. If you've ever made wine or beer, you take the raw materials, you mix it up, you get a must or a wort, you then put it in containers, and under controlled biological process, you convert it into alcohol, which is something for future use or consumption by people. Well, we take the raw sewage that comes in, we treat it under controlled biological conditions, and then we discharge it out to the environment so it can be further used for fish and aquatic life and those other uses downstream.
Okay, the collection system. What is the collection system?
Well, the collection system is the gravity pipes, or the pipes throughout the town. Consists of gravity pipes, force mains, pump stations, and so on. And again, not to be confused with the storm sewer system, which has also pipes underground, but catch basins. They take the rainwater. We take basically the sanitary sewage. Take that. We basically have from curb to curb is the township system. Outside the curb, under the yards, under the sidewalks, into the houses, is the homeowner's responsibility. As the sewage comes into the collection system, ideally we'd like to have one pipe run after the other, running continuously downhill, so we'd use gravity to carry the wastewater through. When you have a township like Parsippany-Troy Hills, where it's spread out in many different elevations, you sometimes, and again developed over time, you have to sometimes pump that lift the wastewater once, it flows by gravity, lift it again, flows by gravity, gets to the treatment plant, and then we lift it again for final treatment. One of the things to remember is that with the collection system, part of the service we provide is that if a homeowner has problems with their sewer system, and I'm not talking about a clogged toilet or a sink that's slow or anything like that, but where they really have trouble when it's backing up through the entire system, give us a call. The phone number is 973-428-7593, extension 0, 973-428-7593, extension 0. We'll send a staff member out who's experienced, take a look at the situation, determine whether it's our problem in the street, which we will fix, or advise you, do you have to proceed with a plumber or something else.
Right, okay. What are some of the projects now that are undertaken in the sewer utility? I know we have meetings and we discuss, but I'd like the audience to know what we're doing.
Yeah, it's important. One of the things when you have a sewer treatment plant, a sewer system, it's a very corrosive, nasty atmosphere and material you're working with. So there's a tendency, a need for maintenance, replacement, and so on. Some of the projects we're working on is when we have heavy rain, extended periods of heavy rain, the flow in the treatment plant can exceed the capacity, almost double or triple it. We wind up then having to bypass some of the tanks so we don't flush out these good bacteria out the river. This is something that's been going on for a while, but we've made it a priority to get the project up and running, to find out where this additional I&I, infiltration and inflow, excess water, groundwater is coming into the sewer system. Is there a way to eliminate it? You find out sometimes there's been a past where we can eliminate it all, but studies have found out you really can't. So now do you provide more pumping, bigger pipes, more treatment to handle it, or is there a percentage you can eliminate and a percentage you have to handle more? So we're in a study portion right now to find out where we stand with that and how we can proceed. We also have a pump station related to that, the number 4 pump station, and a new road pump station where we pump from one side of Route 46 to the other side, then we pump it back again. So we're looking to eliminate those things to save on power and save on make the system more efficient. Also, we have the Skyview pump station. Pump station put in many years by a developer, worked. There's been problems here and there. Finally, the pipe which pumps it over the mountain blew out. It was decided by the township it was cheaper to rebuild the pump station, redirect the force main, and bring it over to the Greystone treatment plant, which is underutilized. By doing that, will be easier to pump, less energy, smaller pumps, and it'll have new equipment in place, so it'll last us hopefully another 20 or 30 years. But that's another project. We're under the gun to get completed soon. While they made $23 million improvements in the treatment plant for the advanced treatment process, certain things at the beginning, like the bar screens and the grit collector, are still manually cleaned. So they're not as efficient as they should be. I want to make sure that whatever comes in to obstruct the plant, which can adversely affect the equipment downstream, is efficiently removed. Because I know for myself, if I had to carry 15 buckets up from down 30 feet from the bottom, after about the first 1 or 2, we'll probably run out of steam. So by having the proper mechanical equipment, and they're better able to protect the downstream, make it easier to treat and more efficient. A few years ago, we're running into a testing of a high voltage system. A few years ago, we had the plant went down for a few days because the transformers and so on blew out. Well, one of the things we're doing again, as I mentioned before, we have a corrosive atmosphere, a lot of humidity. So we're in the process now of setting up a program to have it tested every 2 years, so we can anticipate if a major piece of electrical equipment is going to fail, so we can replace it before it does, so we keep the plant in service. You know, we have an obligation under our discharge permit to meet these discharge limits, but we also have an obligation to the citizens. They're paying us to treat. So we're not treating, we're not doing what we should be doing. So that's important also. The Troy Meadow Interceptor, which is a 72-inch pipe, up to a 72-inch pipe, which flows just like the main artery coming into the treatment plant, that was constructed in about 40 years ago. It's never been inspected. I don't even know if the manhole's ever been opened. We have a program coming. We're actually going to dewater it, clean it, send a camera through it. It's sort of like if you go to the doctor and they stick a camera to different parts of your body to find out what's wrong inside.
Like a colonoscopy, right?
Could be a colonoscopy. could be, they go to check your heart out and valves and so on.
Yes.
So we're going to do that to find out if there's any problems with that, because most of the sewage to the plant flows through it. If that failed, we'd have a catastrophe. And again, it's close to the rivers. We wouldn't want all that raw sewage to back up and run out and adversely affect the environment or adversely affect the citizens. So that's another major project. So that's a major project that are on the table right now. We're moving through.
Well, since I've been mayor, we've had several situations in town, and I know before, like if a resident has a backup, what's the first thing they should do? Say, because we've had them, since I've been mayor, of course. And what's the first thing a resident should do once they have sewer backup?
Well, again, try to assess what the problem is. If it's just one toilet in a house or one sink in a house, it's probably just the plumbing in that fixture. If all the toilets are backing up, then it could be the line, which they're responsible for, from the house, someplace in their internal plumbing, or the line usually under their front yard. But I said, if you call us up, if it gets that bad and everything's backing up, give us a call. We'll send someone out to take a look, inspect it, and determine whether it's on our side of the curb line or your side, and we'll advise you what to do as far as getting a plumber in. Either maybe sometimes just snake the line, or maybe the line has to be replaced. Again, as you go through older areas of the town, they used sometimes use clay. A lot of it is a transite, like a concrete asbestos pipe. Well, it has a useful life, and it's getting near the end of the useful life. Also, if you have, one of the big things, if you put trees in your front yard, the tree roots like to go in between the joints or the cracks in that pipe to get that warm, nutritionist, that water that's in there.
Right.
It's good, it helps them grow. Well, what happens is the roots get bigger, they crack the pipe and they clog it up, and you have a problem. They're backups.
Well, what issues do you see facing the sewer utility in the future, as of right now, really?
Well, the first one is we have a new discharge permit. The DEP, authorized by the U.S. EPA, issues a discharge permit to the treatment plant every 5 years, and we were at the end or start of a new 5-year cycle. The DEP, every time a permit comes out, usually tries to, well, because of their studies they've done, they feel it's necessary to impose stricter limits on the treatment plant discharge. I mean, some of the pollutants we're discharging in the past, while the requirement is 85%, we're doing 95, 98, 100% removal, 99% removal, doing very good with certain pollutants that the treatment plant was designed for. As we get into now higher levels of phosphorus removal, which we have in detergent and so on, what do we do to that? Can we tweak what we have, or we have to change the system? Do we have to modify it? Is it going to cost more in capital cost or operational costs, chemicals or whatever? Also, they're talking about copper, discharge of copper, because they find out that affects some aquatic life in the river. Also, nitrates is another one. How do we treat it? How do we handle it? And as we go to the chlorinated byproducts, while it's important that we put the chlorine in the water to disinfect it, to kill the pathogens, the bad organisms that are in there, the chlorine can form compounds with other organic chemicals to cause problems, so we have to dechlorinate it. Whether we dechlorinating enough, or we have to go to a different method of disinfection. We have the sludge right now. The incinerators were in operation, and they stopped operating about 10 years ago because of air pollution standards. Of course, it was cheaper to dewater it and send it to landfills out of state than it was to bring it up, the incinerator, up to the new standards. Well, at some point, gasoline and trucking is relatively inexpensive now, but if gasoline goes up to $4 a gallon, we're going to have to look at, is it cheaper to truck it out, or is it better, do we have to come up with a treatment method on site to reduce the volume, or another disposal method? That's another thing. We have 28 remote pump stations throughout the city, again, through the township, again, developed by developers, the township, and turned over to the township and so on. All constructed at different times, different levels of different age and so on, different treatment levels and so on. So we have to take a look at those. Do they have to be replaced? Should they be eliminated? Should they be improved? What do we need to do with those? But again, we need to address each one of these because they go on and on. And then two things the citizens can handle. One is that you're always concerned about dumping grease in the system. I've been to schools already, and I talk to classes, and I try to explain to them, you know, when you fry your greasy food and so on, don't dump it down a drain. They feel if they dump it with hot water, it goes away. Well, in reality, it just goes down and clogs either your pipes or the township pipes. Also, a big thing now is flushable wipes. And while they might flush down the toilet, what happens when they get to one of our pump stations or the treatment plant? They clog up, they gum everything up, they clog it up. So that's another thing, because they really don't disintegrate when they get into the sewer. They flush, but they don't disintegrate and so on, as other tissue would do. So they're the main issues we're facing right now.
Because you mentioned it several times, and in the past it's been discussed with me, dewatering. Explain to the resident what that process is, because we get the sludge that comes in, and I guess the water has to be separated out, and then it gets shipped. I guess the sludge gets shipped out, or something like that?
Yes. What happens with the dewatering is, as I mentioned before, with the treatment process, we have the primary sludge, which is the material that settles in about a 2-hour time period in the initial tanks. And then we have the bacteria that we don't need, and we waste that. Well, we send the primary sludge to a holding tank. We then take the biological sludge, because it's very watery, run through it, a gravity thickener, to take a lot of the water that'll pass through a screen, and then we take that still liquid sludge over to back into the holding tank. We take all that sludge from the holding tank, we pump it to belt presses, where we have 2 belts that run continuously on rollers. The sludge goes between it, and we squeeze the water out of it. And while we get down to this 28% solid, it's still about 72% water. It looks like it's like hard mud, but there's still a lot of moisture content in it. We could further get rid of it, but what is the cost to do it? Once that sludge cake comes off the belt conveyors and through the belt presses, we then send it to a landfill out of state.
Okay, now this is something that I remember I interviewed you. We talked about it. And now, although we don't own it, it's leased out to us. A FOG. And ladies and gentlemen, I didn't know what that acronym meant, but it means fats, oils, and grease. Can you explain that process? And we lease that out. You know, we do make dollars on that. But you explain to the residents what that does.
Yes, what the company Lantern does is they take in fog waste. So as I mentioned before, don't fry your fatty food and dump it down the drain. Many places require, and we're talking about that in the township now, where we have commercial establishments, commercial restaurant, kitchens and so on, that they collect the grease and take it away rather than dump it into the sewer. Well, Lantern has haulers come in, pick up that at different locations throughout the state, brings it to their process where they lime stabilize it, means they mix it with lime, they bring it to a high pH and treat it. They then press it to squeeze the water out. The cake that's left over, they send to a landfill, or it actually has a high BTU value, and they're looking for someone they can work with, they can burn it someplace, and then the liquid comes back to us into our treatment plant. One of the things I've learned in working here, because, again, this biological nutrient plant we have is somewhat special, is that the waste that comes back to us from Lantern, in that form, it's not high in carbonaceous BOD, it's in other pollutants, and those pollutants actually work with us to further reduce our air requirements for treatment.
Oh, good. Well, anyway, we're running out of time, so Joe, I want to thank you for being on the show, and I can tell you this, since you started working for the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, I have to say the sewer treatment plant's running like a gem. Thank you once again for tuning in to Pride in Parsippany. And Joe, thank you for being on the show with us. And as a gift, you get your own Pride in Parsippany mug.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And Mayor, since you don't get to visit the treatment plant too often, I'd like to give you this hat.
Thank you.
Parsippany Wastewater Treatment Plant. So when you see it and wear it, you'll think of us.
And the reason why I don't visit the sewer treatment plant is because, ladies and gentlemen, no matter how strong you think your stomach is, it smells down there. Until next time, thank you for tuning in to Pride in Parsippany.